Hi, I'm Jeff Walter. Welcome to the podcast. Today, we're very honored to have a guest, Rubens Tilkian. Ruben is a trial lawyer, mediator, and founder of Vertus Conflict Solutions, with a postgraduate degrees in both corporate law and law and economics. He has also served as vice president of committees at the Bar Association in Sao Paulo, Brazil, including mediation and the bar exam. He's certified in neurolinguistic programming, which I'd like to learn more about as we go on, and a master coach. Rubens blends legal expertise with human insight. He's successfully led over 70,000 agreements across various areas of law, trained more than 550 professionals in mediation and conflict management, is the author of a leading book on Brazil's mediation law. Now based in Miami, Rubens is bringing Vertus mission to assist companies and individuals in the United States. So, Rubens, thank you for agreeing to join me on the podcast, and welcome.
Jeff, thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here with you. Congratulations for the podcast.
Oh, thank you.
And it's an honor for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, so we were chatting, and so you got an interesting background, right? Lawyer, Brazil, mediation. That's an interesting journey. Help educate me on the journey. Like, how did you end up where you're at? How'd you end up as founder and as an attorney running Vertus Solutions?
Yeah, this is a great question, Jeff. And I always answer this. People usually don't understand how a litigation lawyer become a mediator and like a coach to help people drive themselves through conflicts. The thing is, since my early ages, I always knew that I would love to be a lawyer, right?
Uh-huh.
This was like intuitive in my life. I didn't have any question about. I didn't plan any other career. But since the beginning, and I think this was like the turning point in my career since the beginning, I always thought about that clients don't want to stay for too long engaged in a lawsuit. After, I can tell you, after
that's a shocker. That's a
years,
shocking revelation.
I mean, you see, no, you're right, Jeff, because think about this, right? I always believed that clients should have the power to take the decisions in their lives,
right,
and not transfer to a third party, being like a judge or an arbiter in case of an arbitration.
Right.
I always believed that lawyers should give the clients the ability and the space to decide their lives. Right? I don't see the lawsuit as a game, for instance, like with a starting point and the final whistle.
Right.
I don't see the lawsuit like that. We don't need to wait the final award to decide what to do. In my opinion, the good lawyer nowadays is the one that helps the client to leave the lawsuit as quick as possible, to match the client's interest, right, and needs, of course. So since the beginning, even though I was engaged in many complex litigation cases, I always try to see a way out, to take the client out of the lawsuit. Right. And from my experience, in all the cases that I succeed doing that, the clients got really happy, and valued my work. Because sometimes we feel that by, being just a lawyer, petitions, depositions, and waiting years and years to come, the client will be satisfied. But there is one thing, Jeff, that it's very important to understand. Sometimes, even with the final award, and in favor of your client, the client is not satisfied. That's interesting, because when they start the lawsuit, it's like 10 years before. So by the time he gets the final award, probably that need is no longer in place. So sometimes I felt that even delivering a good award to the client wasn't satisfied. So I decided to study, besides all my legal background, some other soft skills in my career. So I did, as you mentioned, like the coaching program, neurolinguistic programming, training, negotiation, and conflict resolution. So every time I'm engaged in a lawsuit, I'm always trying to see ways out to have my client settle and not stay for too long in the law.
So I'm not familiar with neurolinguistic programming. What is that? Help me understand that.
This is a very important tool to help people change their mindset.
Uh-huh.
Because we all come to our lives with beliefs, right?
Right.
And sometimes we have limiting beliefs that get us stuck in certain, stages of our life.
Right.
Could be professionally speaking, relationships, friendships, whatever. So the neurolinguistic programming help people change their mindset, change their habits. We bring support to the client to help them see a different way out from that particular conflict, for instance. So sometimes I see people that come to Vertus saying, every time in life I face this sort of conflict, I can't get rid of this. It's something that is part of my life, and they don't see the patterns behind the conflict.
Right.
So the neurolinguistic programming help people see different paths to change their habits and their mindset to live a better life and strengthen relationships. Basically, this is it.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay. So, yeah.
So
And
you saw this need that even when you were successful, there wasn't satisfaction. And so it's like, how do we get people out of these? So help me understand the leap from that to starting Vertus, because starting a firm, that's no easy undertaking.
yes, you're right.
I know a
And
little bit about that, and it ain't easy.
no, that's a great question. And the thing is this, in the past, I would say probably 20 years ago or so, the mediation practice was within the law firm, was one of the practice areas in my law firm.
Okay.
And then one day I realized that if I wanted to do more to people, to families, to companies, wouldn't make sense to have this field, this area inside the law firm. So I decided to move into a new direction and establish Vertus.
Okay.
And Vertus became one of the leading companies in Brazil in terms of prevention and resolution of conflicts. This is really important to mention because we don't do only mediation. Mediation is a small part of the company. We do that in many areas, many fields, but basically, Vertus concept is helping people, companies, and family business to prevent and solve their conflicts, right? So the idea of establishing Vertus was to bring like a broader view in terms of conflict resolution, and not stay just on the legal side. Because when we say mediation, everybody leads to the legal side,
Right.
right? I'm in court or I'm about to get in court.
Right.
And this is not about Vertus, all right?
Okay.
Vertus focus in the prevention side with our training programs and consulting services, as well as resolution. Okay. So, and I think it was a right call, at that time, because if I had left the conflict resolution service within the law firm, I wouldn't have grown as I did, and I wouldn't have achieved so many agreements and so many people certified in our company,
Yeah. Well, I could see how in the law firm, the mediation side, when you already have the conflict, it's kind of part of that whole two parties have a conflict. How do you adjudicate the conflict? Mediation's one technique, and then ultimately it's the law, right? And it's courts. But
yes.
But the prevention side is really interesting. What I like to, we're a training podcast, right? So we're about training. And as you said, the prevention side is about training and giving people the tools to prevent the conflicts from arising in the first place. Well, let's start. When a client engages you on the prevention side, for the training and that, what are they hoping to achieve? Like why would they bring you, like on the mediation and the litigation side? I understand why you bring somebody in, right? You've got a conflict that seems to be irreconcilable, and somehow you got to reconcile it, right?
It's more objective, right? It's straightforward.
Right. And so here's this conflict, and we're going to reconcile it through mediation or litigation. But what clients, when they bring you on a prevention side, on the training side, what are they hoping to achieve? Like, where are they at, and what, help me understand that. What like What's their goals?
Right. Before, amazing. I think it's a very important topic. Before I answer your question, I think it's important to state what I truly believe in terms of conflict resolution in life. Okay, let's forget about the legal side. Everybody has conflicts, right? I mean, every single day.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if it's an internal conflict or an external conflict, right? Internal conflict, for instance, an employee who is struggling on the decision whether he should look for another job or not, for instance, or like a husband and wife, they're not getting along. So one of the sides are struggling to decide whether they would get divorced or not.
Right.
Okay, so this is like an internal conflict, an example of internal conflict. External conflict would be you don't get along with a colleague that you work with, right? You don't get along with your boss. The way he communicates with you, you don't like it. You think it's disrespectful, whatever. Or you engage like in any kind of conflict with somebody else for any reason. So basically, in my opinion, and this would be probably the core, the foundation of Vertus, we truly believe that self-awareness, self-knowledge, and the ability to deal with conflicts are the key points for a successful life.
Okay.
Personal or professional speaking. Okay. Because what I've seen in the past, like almost 30 years, I see many people not paying attention for the soft skills. It's only about the hard skills. It's only about the technical skills.
Right.
So I'm going to take this course. I'm going to take that program. I'm going to go to Harvard. I'm going to go to MIT, whatever. And I'm going to get a good opportunity in life. Okay.
Right.
This is true, right? But you also have to have some foundations to hold this technical ability during your growing process. Okay. And these foundations, in my opinion, would be self-awareness and learn how to deal with conflicts, right? So basically, and now answering your question, I'm gonna bring an example of a company, okay? Because we do assist individuals and families as well. But let's talk about a company.
Right.
So a company has a huge problem in the turnover. Okay, everybody stays in the company not for more than a year.
Okay.
So looks like they cannot keep like good professionals in the company. On and off, people are coming in and coming out, right? Another thing, they lost productivity. They don't see a teamwork in this or in that department. A lot of conflicts going on. Third, most of the companies, they don't have the ability, the tools to manage conflicts properly. They think HR is ready for that task. But I don't see that, okay? If you're dealing with the small conflicts in a daily basis, fine. But if you're dealing with like major issues or problems that are affecting, the company and the productivity of the team, I don't think they should bring this responsibility to the HR. Because think about this, Jeff, and you have a lot of experience in the field.
Right.
You have like two employees fighting in the company, right? And then the HR invite those guys for some sort of meeting of mediation.
Yeah, like mediation.
Let's not talk about the formal mediation.
Yeah.
Okay. So the question is, do you think both employees or one of them will bring all the subject without any fear to be punished later on, to get the conflict resolved by HR? Meaning that sometimes the employee needs to place a complaint against the company policies, for instance. So this employee will fear to bring this subject to the HR. Okay, so sometimes from my experience, I see that the employees, they don't bring the big picture to be resolved. Okay, it's just part of the problem they're putting on the table. So you're not resolving the conflict. You pretend that you're resolving the conflict just to get off the HR table and not being punished by the company or fired, whatever.
So it's more like
right?
like what I'm hearing, or if I think I hear you correctly, it's almost like when HR gets involved in that, it's more like systemic, not systemic. It's more, yeah, it's more like the symptom. They're curing the symptom, right? You had this particular issue arise between two people, and it's systemic of the larger issue, but you're not getting at the core because they're like, okay, this guy took my milk at lunch or whatever, like, I mean, not the
Yeah,
trivial,
or a good point.
and
That's an amazing example. Let's say that a person has a very, very huge personal problem
right,
that is affecting the business environment.
yeah,
Does this employee will feel comfortable to bring the subject to the HR? How this information could impact his position in the company,
right. So he just wants to
right?
address the immediate symptom, like, I've got the sniffles. Just give me something to clear up the sniffles, not deal with the underlying infection. Which is interesting. It's interesting. I was going to say earlier when you talked about soft skills and you talked about universities and that, I've got my own thoughts about that, but to me, it really goes. And I was listening to what you were saying on the soft skills, and really, to me, it really goes back to like character development. It used to be back, not so long ago, that like a good liberal arts degree was all about character development. And we call it soft skills, but it's that whole, you know, um, developing the character, doing the things you talked about on top, just, what is good, what is evil, how do you treat other people, how do you approach things with humility,
How do you communicate?
how do you communicate, how do you walk in the other person's moccasins for a mile, walk in their shoes, try to see it from their, like, and I think, just my own personal opinion, at the K-12 and university level, we've gotten more, like you said, technical training. Like, I can do my times tables. I know the periodic table. I know how to do these technical things. And
Yes.
we've seemed to have, the STEM stuff, which is really important from an economics perspective, but you have to have that underlying character. And so it's kind of interesting that when you started saying, oh, how do they deal with conflict, and some of the tools that you're giving them on the soft skills, it just made me think about that, but not to go down.
Yeah, no, you're right. And you know what is very curious about all this? Normally, people, families, and companies, they seek for help during the crisis,
Right.
when the chaos is inside the company. And this is, in my opinion, the huge mistake the companies do, right? Because training in soft skills, it's not something that you learn, you grow during the crisis. Right? This is something that you have to have like in an ongoing basis inside the company, because you're taking care of the people who lead your company, right? I bring some numbers for you here. Yeah. I did a research here in the US. Look how interesting is this. The soft skill trainings in companies, okay? As of 2024, only 35% of organizations provide soft skills training to their employees.
Interesting.
In the United States. Yes. And then reading more, I see here a very interesting information. 93% of employers seek candidates with strong communication skills. And 68% of US employees believe interpersonal skills will be crucial in 2025. So my question is this. And then when I run into this, I said, oh my God, this is not right. Because how can 93% of the employers, believe that soft skills is important to the company and to the employees, but only 35 provide training for their company? So basically, what I've learned from this is, it's interesting, right? I mean, look at this. So I am a business owner and I'm willing to hire somebody, but I want to hire somebody who have been through soft skills training. I don't care about what kind of training this person went through. I just want to see in their resume that they've been through soft skills
Right,
training.
right.
Okay. So instead, bringing the people in or train the people who are already working for the company with their own soft skills training, aligned with the culture, with the goals of the company. So this is like it's kind of weird for me.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because one of the things, and when we were down at the show in Miami, it was kind of the focus of my presentation, which is how do you turn training into a strategic asset, and it goes to it's got to have a return, and I think what's happened over the decades is and who's ever doing the training, and you mentioned HR, right? Um, there's been a hesitancy to kind of show a return on soft skills training. Yet, to your point, it's like there's so much demand for that skill set, but yet we don't know how to quantify it or show that $1 spent on soft skills training yields a $2 result. And what I really like about what you said to you when I asked you about, well, so what are your clients hoping to accomplish, right? Like the first thing you jumped at was, well, a lot of them have like a really high turnover, and they're getting feedback that it's not that it's a what's the right, how'd you say it, the culture is a little contentious. Let's just say it's
Yeah. I lose so much time dealing with conflicts in my daily
right,
basis. All the complaints
right,
I hear.
and so I opt out, right, and that's the turnover, but turnover, right, and the other thing you said is like lost productivity, right? Like I used to be able to do 100 things an hour, and now our unit is down to 50 because whatever your measure of productivity is, because you're dealing with all this interpersonal conflict. And I think that's one of the challenges we as an industry have on this on the soft skill training is like, look, it's got to get down to the bottom line. It's a little easier to see on the bottom line when you're talking about a hard skill, right? But but yet you hear the clamoring for leadership training, and I think so much of it has become perceived, I should say, as checking a box rather than having an impact, right? And so I love what you said. What your first say is like, well, they've got this turnover problem, and they see that there's a lot of angst and conflict with the organization. What can you do?
Yeah.
And those numbers you throw out on the research, that's just it's fascinating. Like it's fascinating, and it goes to me, it goes back to all that character development. But you got to kind of deal with the people you have, right? You
Yeah.
can't go
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. I have one
Yeah.
example here that might be interesting to share with you. I was consulted by one financial institution here in
Mm-hmm.
Miami that was complaining a lot about the turnover, right? And well, we cannot afford this anymore. We bring people in, we train them, we provide clients, all kind of stuff, and then after a year they leave. And I said, look, and I asked them, what kind of program do you have to understand what's going on in your employee's mind? Why
Right.
they're leaving? You know, there's a reason for that. This is not something that you're not a lucky company. There's a reason and some things that we need to find out within the teams to understand what's going on and address the situation
Uh-huh.
properly,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then I sent a proposal to do the training program as well as to manage the conflicts from my side, which I can explain later what we do after the training program. And the company said, we don't have the budget. We just don't have the budget. So when you see the P&L of the financial institution, you ask yourself, if you don't have budget to take care of your employees and to solve the turnover problem that you're facing, what is the budget for?
Right.
Right? And then I ask, when you lose like a banker, when you lose like any employee in your institution, how many clients this person might take into a
Mm-hmm.
different place? How much money are you losing, with this situation? So it's something interesting. I think you got the point. Training in soft skills, it's not only in crisis, it's not only during the chaos. It's something that the companies need to understand that is a gift to the employees. You know, if you want to value your employee, if you want to have this employee committed to the company, you have to offer this employee some sort of training and tools to manage their lives, right? I got here some numbers that it's very impressive concerning the turnover. I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but it's crazy. Look at this. When you have like the turnover situation in the company, when you're talking about hourly workers, okay, just regular hourly workers, the cost of replacement can reach $1,500 per person.
Oh, easily.
So every time, every time the company like loses one employee, one hourly worker, they're going to spend at least $1,500.
And that's just to replace them.
If we're talking,
that's just getting another warm body
in there. That's right. If we're talking about a technical position, it goes from 100 to 150% of the employee's annual salary.
Yeah. Yep.
And if we are talking about a C-level, we are talking about approximately 220% of the annual salary. Okay. So when a company says, I don't have the budget to do the training and retain the good values that I have in my company, I honestly have some difficulties to understand that.
Yeah.
You know, because when you have employees happy, employees with additional tools, with more expertise in how to manage conflict, in how to communicate, the impact within the company, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think it goes back to, are you looking at it as a budget or as an investment, right? And a lot of training firms, and that's like I said, I love the way you started that, was it's they never show the they don't treat it, they don't look at it, they don't present it as an investment, right? Like, you know, one of the things one of my mentors once said, and it has nothing to do with training, but it was costs always precede revenue. You know, you got to invest and then you get the return, right? And
that's right.
Yeah, you may not have budget for it, but to your point, it's like you're either going to come up with the investment in this, or you're going to pay the continual turnover. And to your point on finding the folks, it's like, and then there's the, you know, cost of them coming up to full productivity, but also the cost of them integrating into the work team and coming up to full productivity and having those. And we all have, in every organization, we have this. They're like the cultural icons of the organization. You know what I mean? Like they can be at the entry level position, or they can be at a senior position, but they're like people that embody the culture of the organization. And if those folks are turning over, it's catastrophic. And
you can lose the culture of the company. Right?
You know, and so treating it as it's not a budget, yes, but we need to make an investment. So where do you want to make? We don't have unlimited investment dollars, obviously. We're not a government. Most companies can't just print money. But you know, to your point, like you bring things like that and you go, okay, well, what are we shooting for? Are we shooting for a 10-point reduction in turnover of entry-level staff? Because if we can get a 10-point reduction in turnover, you know, let's do the math. You know, blah, 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 blah. That's $100,000 savings, or $250,000 or $500,000 or millions of dollars, depending on the size of the organization. But to do that, we got to make this investment, and you know, and investments by their very nature are risky, right? Because there's no guarantee you're going to ever get the return. But you're doing that when you're doing product development. You're doing that when you're doing sales and marketing. You're doing it all the time. You know, and that's it. So okay, so somebody says, all right, you know, my productivity's down. I've got this angst in the organization. You know, turnover. We're focusing on the goal, right? We got the right target. We're not just going to check a box saying everybody went to conflict resolution training and therefore we're awesome. They're actually trying to achieve something, and they bring you guys in and who are you training and what are you trying to teach them? We touched a little bit on the soft skills, but how do you do that? Like you know, do you come in and you talk to everybody? Or is it a department? Is it managers? Is it frontline workers? Like, who are you training, and what are you teaching them, and what do they need to learn how to know and do? I know that's a lot of questions all in once, so I just try and get them all in.
Yeah, I'll try to. No, that's perfect. That's perfect. I think I might have a couple of answers, but I think all of them will lead to the
Okay.
same direction. Okay. So basically, this call always comes from the company. Okay. Because the company is facing a problem within the legal department, for instance, or the company is facing a dispute between the marketing and the commercial
Okay.
department. Okay. So, first of all, we understand the pains behind, you know, uh, the company. I mean, tell me your problems, right? Where do you think you're losing time, productivity? Where is your area that you lose many people
Right.
over the years, right? You have a turnover problem. So basically, first we understand where is the focus
Right.
of the problem. Where is the problem, right? It's difficult to, because sometimes you can come, some companies already hire me to come and just say, look, let's have a general presentation and training in conflict
Okay.
management. Let's give these people more tools to manage their conflicts and not bring the problems to the company.
Okay.
Let's put it this way. It works. I like that. Okay. I think it's a first step. Okay. But usually when the company calls, they already bring a specific situation or problem they're facing
Okay.
inside the company. Okay. So let's say that the problem is in the marketing department. Okay. And they don't know exactly if the problem is like in the entire department or between certain employees, whatever. What we do, we step in the company, okay, in the marketing department. We do some interviews. Most of our work are confidential, so the employees can safely disclosure
Right.
whatever is going on within the department, okay? And we understand the situation. We try to get as many information as possible to then develop a training program for
Okay.
that team, okay? Because sometimes conflicts happen every day, but sometimes they're just different. So it's hard for me to say, okay, I'm going to just pick here on my shelf this training program and give to them without knowing the actual problem. So, first of all, I understand the problem. I try to understand the situation they are living, and then we design or we pick one of our training programs to provide them knowledge, to provide them tools, to provide them reflection, to understand that sometimes the problem is not the company. Sometimes the problem is not the colleague. Sometimes the problem is not the boss. Sometimes the problem is us.
That requires some self-reflection.
Oh, yes, lots of
Yeah.
self reflection. And that's what I said in the beginning. In my opinion, the pillar, the foundation of our lives is the self knowledge. Whoever is willing to go in that path will have a better life, a peaceful life, right? Because won't get involved in any kind of conflicts, right? So basically, that's what we do. And then when we decide the training program, we provide the training program, and I can mention some that
Yeah.
we have available. And after that, we start measuring, you know, if those problems still are taking place in
And
that
what's the
department.
tip? I mean, we
Okay.
talked about turnover, but what are some of the other things you measure to identify that the problem, here's the problem? And okay.
Productivity, right? Sometimes the team is not delivering the work. Sometimes the quality of the work, it's not the way it used to be. And most of the times we see that these sort of problems happen because people are not getting along. Okay. So they are not delivering on time. The spreadsheet is incomplete. The presentation is ugly,
Okay.
whatever, because they need to be feeling well to deliver a good service, a
Okay.
good work. Right. So basically, once we start the training program, what I've seen, in action is that it's very interesting, Jeff, because people start relying in our company as a neutral, and they start sharing other problems that might be affecting the business environment. So we host these problems within Vertus, and we deliver the employee back, in a different way. We try to fix their problem. We tried to bring some brainstorming to their lives. So they ended up feeling better in the business environment. Most of the times, I don't like to say most of the times, but I mean, I have a bunch of examples that I handle within companies that the actual problem within the company was personal problems.
Okay.
Okay. So people on and off are projecting their problems
Right.
onto others. The projecting word is okay, right? I mean, we don't want to recognize that this is a problem that belongs to me. So it's easier to transfer my problem to my wife, my colleague, or my boss. I don't want to deal with my own conflict. So it's easier to say it's
Right.
his fault,
Right.
not mine, right? So I see this problem on and off a bunch of times, hundreds of times. Because sometimes people bought an apartment and they don't have the money to pay the mortgage. Sometimes they're getting divorced or they're getting the first child and they don't have the budget for that. So a lot of problems, personal problems start to affect the business environment. Okay? Because the person thinks the company doesn't pay very well. The employee thinks that the colleagues are not helping him in that particular task because he has problems. He has personal problems. And he's projecting the personal problems onto the company.
So,
yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, I think I'm listening and I understand, but that type of, building the self-awareness and that knowledge, like, I mean, these are foundational elements of a person's being, right? Like, I can
Yes.
teach you pretty easily how to do something technical, right? It's like push this, turn, push button A, turn knob B, do these 6 steps, and voila, you've made a souffle, right? Um, and that doesn't require you to change who you are, right? It just means you're pushing this button, turning this knob, adding these ingredients, throwing it in the oven, and now you know how to cook something or make something. What you're talking about is like really deep in the person's psyche and who they are. And how maybe this gets to neuro-linguistic programming or something, but like how can you be effective doing that in such a relatively short amount of intervention, right? Like if you're talking, like, what I'm saying, like, because I'm assuming you're not there for
Yes, I understand.
training the guy.
It's a deeper and more difficult learning process.
So
I understand.
So help me understand how that's possible. And I think that's where you see a lot of, we were talking about character before and some of the soft skills, they're important, but they're so closely tied to the person that it's hard. Like, how do you get down to that level that where the person has to open themselves up to say, here's a part of me that needs to change. Like that's really hard.
That's hard. One of the problems, Jeff, it's an amazing point. I'm glad you brought this issue. And I think one of the major problems I see is the lack of consistency in terms of getting to know yourself and having like the ability to stick with the plan and keep learning and pursuing changes in your life. So the world is the way it is because there is no consistency, in people to manage their own thoughts and fears and pains, whatever. Okay. So what I would say is this: you're completely right. It's a different path. It's a more solid and not encouraging, but challenging, better saying, path for people in general. But I would say that sooner or later, every one of us will have to connect with our self-knowledge, either through crisis, either through chaos, or as a growing process. Okay? So nobody's going to escape from this.
I 100% agree with that. But making the change you're talking fundamental change to a person. and that's hard. So so how do you? Because the other thing I would also imagine is if the person does go through that change, if you're able to in your training program help them with that change, that it propagates throughout their life, not just a work conflict or something like that. Like, yeah, one of the interesting things with the behavioral psychologists and behavioral therapy, to get over phobias and things like that, that was interesting, was there was a big debate when they first started introducing, and I'm not a psychologist, so, please pardon me if I mess this up a little. But my understanding is when the behaviorists first started, there was a big conflict of, well, you're not addressing the root cause. They're just going to get a phobia somewhere else if you address this phobia, let's say. And it turned out, no, what they never got over the phobia. They just developed courage, and they got over their phobia because they could courageously, they had the courage to face the phobia, but then
To
it
face the problem. Yeah.
also meant they had courage to address other things in their lives, and so it fundamentally changed their life. If you had, like, say, a fear of elevators, right? It's like you get over the fear of elevators, and next thing you know, you're addressing issues with personal relationships and other things, because now you didn't just get over a fear of elevators, you developed the courage to overcome a fear, and now you're applying that. So, like,
Yes.
do you see things like that with the training you're doing on the interpersonal and the conflict resolution, that it's like, well, we solved the problem, turnover is down, productivity is up, we're happy, but do you ever come around, a year later and say, like, do you have any, does that kind of, because I would imagine that would happen with fundamental changes to people when you're talking with the type of changes you're talking about.
Yeah, I would say that this is like, in order to change somebody, it might
Right.
take like a lifetime, right? I've been studying self knowledge for over 30 years, and I still have a lot to learn. Every day, it's a learning process for me. What I would say is this: we are not a
Right.
therapist as well, right? The differences between
Yeah.
Vertus, no, but it's very,
Right.
it's connected. Sometimes I get referrals from therapists, couples therapists. They send the clients over to Vertus to help them
Yeah.
overcome the conflicts. So sometimes I work together with therapists. We don't dig the past. We don't try to understand the past as a
Right. Right. Right.
therapist
Yeah.
does, right? But sometimes it's important to understand our past experience, because by our past experience, our values, our beliefs, our personality, this is how we shape our current life. Okay, so sometimes, or in some of our trainings, we help people understand how did they shape their lives. Okay, tell me about your past. Tell me about your past experience. What did you inherit from your parents? What did you learn from your folks? Right? Tell me what is right and what is wrong
Mm-hmm.
in your values. And when you see that in a training program, that your values are totally different than your colleague, and doesn't mean that one is right and the other one is wrong, you start understand that you cannot judge other people with your own values and the way you
Right.
see the world. So this is basically the major problem I see in my profession. People judge others. They say, I wouldn't do if I were in his shoes. I think this is crazy. How he could do that? I would never take that position in my life. Okay, but this is you, based in your personality, values, beliefs, and past experiences. So everybody's different, even twins. Okay, I've
Mm-hmm.
trained twins in a family. They were completely different. Same food, same house, same education, okay, same trips, same everything, and they were totally different people. Okay, so when we teach people in
Mm-hmm.
our training programs how to understand yourself and understand that people are different, okay, we are able to take out of the table, to take out of that group the problems with judgment. Okay? One of the major problems that relates to conflicts, it's when people are judging others with their own values, right? Another issue here that I think it's important to mention. We teach people how our internal conflicts might affect the relationships. These are simple things, Jeff, okay? But people are so much in the autopilot that they cannot see. Okay, so let's say that I have a very important meeting. I have this beautiful and amazing interview with you today. And for some reason, I left my house late. For whatever reason, okay? My kids were giving like some trouble. I was late. I lost the time, whatever. My way to the office would be very stressful, okay? If somebody is stopped in the light and when it's green, they don't move, I'm going to harness a crazy guy to make that person move, right? And doesn't mean that I'm a crazy guy. I'm a crazy driver. I'm just late. So basically, when we show people within the company that they might be facing internal problems, personal problems, and they are projecting onto the colleagues or in the company, they start realizing that the company is not the enemy. The company is not against them. The company actually is a support, is one of the pillars to help the employee overcome that problem. Another example, and I think by giving example, we'll answer your question, which is really good. By teaching people the power of communication, the power of listening, which is a simple thing. People think they know how to listen. And this is one of the most difficult tools ever.
Well,
I don't know if you
as you
agree
said,
with
I
me,
think people
right?
know how to hear. Listening.
That's right. It's
It's
a totally different
listening
thing.
requires active engagement. Like you have to actually, I
Active
remember
engagement.
long
Yes.
ago, I went in my grad school, they were talking, about communication, exactly what you're talking about. And the person said, most people in a conversation, when they're not the one talking, they're just thinking about what they're going to say next and not listening. What?
Do you know how we call that?
Yeah.
Defensive listening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, grad
Right?
school was a few years ago for me, and it stuck with me though. Like that, yeah, you the defensive listening. You're sitting there like listening, but really planning, okay, what's my next move? What am I going to say next? And not really hearing or listening to what the person's saying. And myself personally, when I started doing that, I found the conversations much more interesting, right? Because like people say some really interesting things if you listen to them.
You engage with the person, right? You engage. You
Right.
actually engage
Like they have
with
like
the
an
person,
interesting
right?
and getting back to like I just love learning things, and it's one of the reasons why I'm in this industry. And so when you actually listen to people, you learn something. Now it's not always it's not always something you want to learn, because sometimes you'll learn something about yourself that you are not happy with. But you always learn something.
Yes, and you're totally right. And talking about listening, I'm going to give you other examples. The defensive listening, it's one of the most common ones. So imagine you have a friend, he comes, Jeff, you can imagine, I just had an amazing trip with my family. I would like to share with you, Jeff, it doesn't really matter what we think about where he went. He's just trying to tell the story for us, right? So if he says, well, I went to Brazil, okay? And then you said, but Brazil? Why did you go to Brazil? So my question is, do you think you're going to engage with your friend in this conversation? Is there empathy from your side? Of course not. So there's no communication. So this is one thing that we teach them in the training program. Another example, the fake listening. This is amazing.
Fake listening is different than defensive listening?
This is when...
Okay.
Oh, yes. The fake listen is when you don't care at all about what the person is saying. You're just like giving this
uh-huh,
attitude, you know?
yeah.
Oh yeah, and then the people are saying, hey, okay, let me get my cell phone here. Hold on, Jeff. All right, and then I come back here. Could you repeat, please? I just lost my mind here for a while. Okay, this is the fake listening, and then we have another one which is very interesting, which is the selective listening. So whenever matters to me, I'm paying attention. When I don't care anymore, I just put the fake listening in place. Okay, so these are the problems companies face in the business environment. Okay, so this is another way to teach them emotional intelligence. In one of our training, we share with them like a test that they find out their personality. This is amazing. Okay,
is it like the big five type of personality? The big
nine, the nine. The big nine, the Enneagram.
No,
I don't know if you heard about the Enneagram. Yeah, I did a certification program in Brazil. It's amazing.
So,
okay, you can see out of 9. Okay,
9 dimensions of personality,
and then people get yes, and then you put these people in a group of people, and they discuss their personality, and they say, well, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. You know, I didn't know that I had all these things going on inside me. So then we put like different personalities to talk about and see how different they are. And doesn't mean they don't like each other, doesn't mean that one is right, the other one is wrong. They're just different. So by just teaching them basic skills in self-awareness, okay, and for instance, about self-awareness, everybody has conflicts. Everybody suffers, okay? Everybody has difficulties in overcoming problems. Everybody has challenges in life, okay? Everybody goes through difficult times. When you show them these very simple skills and learning, they end up realizing that they're not a problem. They're just simple and normal people that need to invest in their self-awareness.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to press a button and say, all right, so after my training program, everybody's going to be ready for life. Everybody's going to be connected to self-awareness. No. I'm giving the starting point, okay, and I'm giving like the basic tools to for a big step.
That's an interesting way of looking at
basic,
it. Like it's almost like you're starting them on that journey. You're showing them the path and taking them 1 or 2 steps down the path, and then saying, well, this is the path you should go down. And some will and some won't, but then that's how you're able to be effective, in that you're not sitting there going, okay, you went through this program, now you're a master at conflict resolution. It's like, well, no, really, you got to build these soft skills. I can help you. I can show you the path for these soft skills. I can take you down a couple of steps down the path, like with the active listening, but then here's the path, and you need to continue down that path. Hey, quick question. You said so what was the personality thing? Because I thought I took a personality assessment on the Big Five, and oh my God, was it spot on?
Right.
And when I learned more, and my wife was a psychologist, so that's but man, it was so spot on. And what was interesting is not only did I learn more about myself, but I was like, I'm 40th percentile in this dimension, and and 99 on this other dimension, and therefore I behave like, my default setting is to behave like this. But it was also the realization. So I got a lot of self-awareness out of it. But the other thing was the realization, well, I'm in the 90th percentile of this, which means 9 out of 10 people aren't. And therefore they're, depending where they're at on that one, they will react differently and behave differently. Their default setting is different than mine. And so it was really interesting. So you said the Big 9. So again, not a psychologist, but
yes. So just one parenthesis here. Think about how good, how accurate would be for a company to run the Enneagram test with the employees to get to know which one would be the best position and task for that particular person. So let me show you here. This is not the best way to show, but I think you can see, right? These are, I'm going to read it to you. This
hold that up so I can write that down. What's the anagram? Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can send to you. Yeah, I send to you later, but just to give an example. On the Enneagram, okay, we have the basics. We can have 27 and 54 personalities, but I would stick with 9 because I think it's enough. We don't need to go deeper than that, okay? So number 1, the perfectionist and the critical. Number 2, the friendly and proud. Third, adaptable and the vain. 4, intense and emotional. 5, private and quiet specialists. I would say that these are the people who normally talk to themselves, the number 5. Number 6, cautious or skeptic. 7, enthusiast and visionary. Number 8, challenger and controller. And number 9, peacemaker and complacent. Okay? So look at this. Imagine when you are building your team. Okay? So you are selecting people who are going to be out there selling products on the street. Do you think the private and the quiet specialist will be the right fit? Of course not. However, if you have to run a deep research about a product to get as much information as you need to develop a product, this person will be the ideal, will be the perfect fit for the position, right? So when you talk to a group of people in a company, in a department, and you run this test, and I can share with you, okay? Later on, we can take the test. And you see, well, I can see why I don't get along very well with that person. Because he's totally different. So basically, and then trying to answer your question in the best way as possible by bringing some seeds, some basic concepts, but very powerful concepts, and making those people, taking dynamics during the program. For instance, one of the first questions I ask is, how many of you feel that you're connected with self-awareness? And everybody raise their hands. Okay, that's fine. I don't challenge that. I just let that the way it is, so they will feel during the program that this is not true. So the first dynamic that we have, for instance, in the program, turning conflicts into opportunities. This is self-awareness training program. Is the name of the dynamics? The dynamic is first step towards the self-knowledge or the self-awareness. Most of them cannot answer the questions. So I go and say, you see, most of you thought that you were connected to yourself, with your inner. As you can see here, by just answering simple questions, you realize that you're not connected. So by not being connected to yourself, how can you be ready to the task? How can you be ready to face conflicts in a daily basis? How can you be ready not to judge your colleague, not to judge your wife, your business partner, whatever? Okay, so this is like, we have one program called Navigating Life Conflicts. Okay, let me just talk to you a little bit about the programs very quickly. The first one is turning conflicts into opportunities. This is a very great experience and deep experience in self-awareness. In this program, we teach self-awareness and we run the test of the personalities. Okay, and at the end, we have a big surprise for the group in terms of empathy. So they can learn empathy, not to judge others anymore. And I can tell you, it's a very beautiful ending, step of the program. And people sometimes leave totally transformed in terms of empathy. Okay. And so this is one program. The other one is the Navigating Life Conflicts. This is probably the most complete program we have. And this includes the turning conflicts into opportunities. Okay. Plus, we have internal and external conflicts. We do have personalities. We have expectations, and we have communication tools. This is the program we use to certify conflict managers, the Navigating Life Conflicts. Okay. So people learn the self-awareness, people connect to emotional intelligence, and they also take home like knowledge to start developing their skills of of conflict management. There is another one called Mastering Negotiation. So we teach people how to plan and how to negotiate. Okay. Not only like if you're buying something, negotiate in life. I'm going to talk to my boss. I'm going to talk to my wife. I'm going to talk to my kids, whatever.
Yep.
This is all negotiation. So we teach people how to negotiate better. And the last one, but not less important, and in fact, this is one of my favorite, is the rewriting the script of your life. This is, for me, is the most powerful training program
wait for you
we
to
have.
set easy goals. That's a pretty big goal right there. That's very cool. That's very cool. Yeah, so tell me more about that one. That sounds really interesting.
This one here, this is I don't want to just say that the other ones are not important, please, but this one here is my favorite. Okay. And because this is about understanding the power. The ideal, in my opinion, would be taking the turning conflicts into opportunities or the navigating life conflicts, and then go to rewriting the script of your life. Sorry. And this program is about truly understanding the power of self-awareness. Okay. This is the right fit for those who wants to understand why their life it's not moving forward. Okay, why we are suffering for. Why? Some people, or most of the people, better say, they suffer for generic things. They don't know exactly why they're suffering. Where is the actual problem? So this program helps people understand where is the actual problem and where they want to be. So tell me, okay, we understood where is your problem, your pain, your fears. So where do you want to get? Okay, tell me what happiness is for you. What do you need to see? What do you need to hear in the future to feel better than you're right now? So we help people understand that. And then we draw together an action plan to help the person achieve their goals, to help people achieve their goals. So self-awareness, we understand the problem, not generic problem. We go deep into the problems, and then we understand where do they want to get, what are their goals in life, and then we help them to build an action plan. And all this, we use the human needs, the 6 human needs, okay? And which is comfort, uncertainty and variety, love and connection, significance and importance, recognition, okay, growth and contribution. So we use these skills to help people overcome their difficulties. So this is like amazing when you want to fix relationships. Doesn't matter what kind of relationships, or when you want to have an action plan for your life to, achieve your goals. So this is like a beautiful program, in my opinion, and that's why I love so much. But I mean, all of them are important.
Well, they're building blocks, and it's interesting because they kind of, as you were going through them, they kind of go from the, I don't want to say the tactical, but the, rewriting the script of your life. That's really deep. Like that's like, I guess that's maybe they go from kind of a certain level of depth down to like really, really deep, and that's very cool.
Yes, but you can also write small scripts. Our life is made by long movies, the actual movie, or short movies, right? If you're going to take a trip with your wife, for instance,
Right.
you have to align expectations. What are you expecting from this trip? Do you want to go to museums? Do you want to go in sports activity? Do you want to sleep until late? Do you want to wake up early? If you don't align expectations in your short movie, the
That's
trip might
interesting.
not be as good as could be.
Yeah.
So basically what we do, we help people rewrite their script. Could be a lifetime, could be a short script, you know.
Yeah.
I have an example. Do you want a very funny, not funny, okay, but it's funny, but it's a real example. I used to work with this couple back in Brazil, and they called me one day and said, Rubens, because the script of our lives can be also a consultant service, not only a training, okay? And he said, look, we are willing to take the script of our lives, consulting, not training, but we decided to take a trip before that. I think we're going to travel together. We're going to go to the Maldives, which is a paradise. And I think we're going to engage in some, good talk, good experience, and we're going to heal most of our problems in that travel. Okay. I said, okay, fine. I mean, I'm going to be here cheering for you guys. Hopefully you guys have fun. It's a beautiful place. I've never been there, but I've seen pictures, and seems to be that is the right place to fix relationships, right? So from Brazil, and I think from US as well, would take probably 2 days to get there, right? Because you have to connect flights, and it's very far away. Maybe 18 hours
is that in the
of traveling.
Indian Ocean or the South Pacific, the Maldives?
Yeah.
South Pacific, okay.
I think it's South Pacific.
Yeah, that's a ways off.
The Maldives Islands.
Others,
I think so.
Side of the planet.
There. It's around there.
From us. It's very far. Yeah.
It's far away. It's far away from us. So let's say that it takes approximately 2 days to get there. So I was like, I wasn't following the trip, but I was like putting my best energy to get good news from this couple, beautiful couple, and that things were working well in that trip, right? So after 3 or 4 days after the departure date, they were back in Brazil.
And it takes like 2 days to get there.
The plan, Jeff, was 13 days trip. 13-day trip. After 3 or 4 days, they were back in Brazil. And the guy called me. Oh, no, Rubens, I don't think I'm not going to take the program anymore. This is not for me. I just realized that we are not supposed to be together anymore. And I said, okay, but tell me what happened. Give me some examples. Let me understand what happened, right? So the first day, I tried to woke her up, and she didn't. She was in bed. And I had rented a jet ski to drive around the islands. Okay, so I had to go by myself. When I got back to the room, I said, I have a reservation for snorkeling, okay?
Right.
On this particular beach. And she gave me a mad face. She didn't want to go. She was in a bad mood. And I ended up going by myself, okay? And then when I got back from snorkeling, I invited her to go cycling on the beach. And she didn't want to talk to me anymore. And that's it. I said, it's done. I'm not going to spend one more day in this place with this lady. And then I had the opportunity to talk to the lady. And I said, what's going on? And she said, Rubens, the first day of our trip, I would love to have breakfast in our bed, to chat, to stay together, to talk. And when I woke up, the guy was in a jet ski crossing to one side to the other one, and he didn't even invite me to go. And you know what? It gets worse. When he got back from the jet ski, and then I told myself, well, now it's going to be our moment. He's going to surprise me. He's going to be here. We are going to make love, whatever. No. He came and said, we got to go because we have to go to this snorkeling tour. So I said, are you here to spend time in the island or to fix our relationship? So, I mean, long story short, can you see how important it is to align expectation? Both of them were there to fix the relationship. The guy, a sports guy, wanted to have fun with the lady. The lady wanted to spend time, romance, whatever, with the husband. Different personality, different viewpoints about the world, about the trip. They fought. They ended up coming back.
Mm-hmm.
So this is all about the script of our lives. Align expectations. Understand the character of your movie and understand if the character is ready for the role.
Interesting. So that's interesting. So the so what? Shifting gears a little. So you set all this up in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. So lovely city. My sister was there for a couple of years. She loved it down there. What precipitated the move to Miami?
Okay, that's an interesting question. You know, Miami. Let me go way back a little bit. I used to live in Miami back in 2000 and 2001. I came here by myself. You know, I used to work for a law firm here in Miami, and it was a great experience for me. You know, and I have always loved the United States. You know, I always felt connected with the American people. I love the values. I've been to the United States since I was a child. You know, since I was 6 years old. I'm 46 now. So probably I wouldn't say every year, but almost every year I was here in the United States because this is a place that I love. And my wife and I decided to bring the kids. I have one son, 7 years old, and my daughter is turning 3 in a couple of weeks. And we decided to bring them to give them, you know, a different experience, to give them a different education. Brazil is an amazing country. São Paulo, absolutely a lovely place. But we felt that that was the moment to take this step and bring this experience to our family. So now I'm back in Miami after 1.5 years with all the family, even the dog.
Hey, dog's part of the family. You just got to come.
Crew. Yes, and we are happy, you know, seeing my kids. It's funny because my little one, her first language is Spanish. Can you imagine that? Because she learns from the nanny and from her school. And the Portuguese became the second language and English the third one. So it's an interesting thing to see, you know, all these things. My boy speaking Portuguese and English fluently, I get very proud of. And I think it's a great experience, you know. And unfortunately, nowadays we are facing some security problems in São Paulo, you know, and this is make me feel very sad. But this is also one of the reasons too, you know, we want to spend some time here in this great country, you know, and we are very happy. And I think in terms of Vertus, I think the Vertus approach, it's a perfect fit for the United States. You know, I think people here, they need as much as the people in Brazil. And I think it's going to be a great challenge for me. You know, it's not easy when you do like an expansion, international expansion. I've been challenged.
Yeah.
I've been challenged myself a lot because when you have a lot of recognition in Brazil, your numbers are amazing. You know, I settled more than 70,000 cases, and then you just land here in Miami and you start from scratch, and you have like opportunities as you gave to me here to be here today. I'm very thankful, and it's just like another challenge. I love challenges. I'm ready for that. I think the product is amazing. It's life-changing. How people, I feel so good by doing that.
Yeah, well, it's a definite testament to you and your fortitude, because there's not a lot of people that would leave a comfortable situation build up a business. I mean, I know how hard it is to build a business, and then go, hey, I got a really good idea.
Oh yes,
I'm going to move to a different country to pioneer our international expansion. Like usually it's like more like, no, I got a great idea. You move to a different country and pioneer our international expansion. But that's how most owners would behave. But yes. for you to do that, I think it's a testament to your fortitude and that. And we're coming up on some time here, you know, kind of shifting gears a little. Outside of professional, what do you like to learn about? What piques your curiosity? You know, I'm a very curious guy myself. You know, I'm a history kind of guy, which I was never a history guy as a younger, you know, in school. But over the years,
Right.
I just find it really fascinating to learn about, because it tells the story of how we got where we are today, right? Like, why is the world the way it is today? And that's history. So I find that pretty fascinating. But
Yes,
that's me.
that's a great point.
I got weird interests.
Yeah. Yeah, let me tell you, no, I think his story is amazing. I mean, let me tell you a little bit about myself. When I was living in
Uh,
Brazil, my hobby, the thing I used to do for love, I love it, and it was something very, very inspiring for me,
oh, I noticed that
was
on your
go
profile.
karts. I
Yeah.
was always, yes, yes. And by the way, I used to
Yeah.
have a go kart school for kids in Brazil. It was an amazing program, right?
Uh-huh.
Used to race since I was a kid, since 11 years old. I even had the opportunity
Uh-huh.
to drive go karts with Ayrton Senna in the past and some other Formula One drivers, just for fun, of course. I used to race professionally, and this was my hobby and the thing I love to
Uh-huh.
do. I'm not doing here in Miami yet.
Yeah.
I know we have a track here nearby in Homestead, but I haven't started yet. I'm adjusting still in my life here,
But
so I'm not ready
when
for
did you
that.
start driving
But
go-karts?
right now,
I'm like, because I'm thinking of your kids, and I'm like,
11 years old.
well, there's the 7-year-old. They're coming up on that.
I'm gonna tell you something. He started with three and a half in
See,
Brazil,
he's already come up the learning curve there. Yeah.
and he loved it. He loved it. But thank God, when he got here in Miami,
Uh-huh.
he engaged in soccer. He loves soccer, and he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to go kart anymore. So I'm happy for that. It's
It's
less dangerous. It's cheaper, and he's very happy in doing so well in soccer. And I'm always trying to study and get as much information as I can
uh-huh.
about the U.S. politics. Because I think it's a very interesting learning about
Yeah,
negotiation and
we could
mediation,
use a little
right?
mediation
In
in the
international
country right
scale,
now. Yeah, a little bit.
I agree
Uh,
100%. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
mediation, I wouldn't
yeah.
say
Well,
mediation, I would say
yeah.
conflict
Well,
management.
it's
Because
like
mediation,
understanding the other point of
yeah,
view. It's and not demonizing the other point of view, regardless of what side you're on. Of anything. Yeah.
sure, sure. I think mediation or conflict management would be ideal to solve like politics problems, war problems. And I mean, it's just like because think about this, Jeff. When you become a specialist in negotiation, mediation, conflict management, whatever, it means that you know how to read and understand
Right.
people. It's not about the techniques. Okay. If I teach only techniques, we're
Right. Right.
on the hard skill side, right? So what I stand for, and I always try to show people, is if you want to be a good lawyer, if you want to be a good negotiator, mediator, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you have to understand about people. Okay. If you don't understand about people and about yourself, you won't be able to be a good mediator, right? So when you see like politics, international conflicts, uh, I mean, this is very interesting to me, because sometimes I feel some problems that we just could step in and try to help with a different viewpoint, with a different experience, with a different approach. So since I think the United States like is the
Mm-hmm.
country that is an example for the world, in my
Right.
opinion, it doesn't matter the politics side. I think the country has foundations that, regardless
Right.
who is in charge, the country always stand.
Yeah. I have a question on the mediation, that because if we get into the realm of the politics, what is it? I just believe we have more in common, that regardless of what issues we're talking about from a politics, I think we have more in common than we have in difference. But yet the focus is always on, at least on the public conversation. It's like, you think we should paint the wall yellow, I think we should paint it purple. Yellow's a stupid color, it should be purple, right? And you're like, why would anybody want to paint it purple? That's only idiots would make it purple, right? Um, yet we both agree we want this nice house and we have this room, and it's going to be the game room for the kids because we want to raise our we want our kids to have this nice environment to play in, but we just disagree on what color to paint it. But all the other stuff we agree on. In the mediation, I just believe on a political side, I could just we got to remind ourselves that we have so much more in common than we have apart. Does that factor into mediation when you're down at the more granular level of a company, like kind of pointing out that look, you disagree on this, but you agree on this, right? Yeah.
Yeah, let's pick our fights, right?
Yeah.
Let's pick our fights.
Right.
Let's choose our fights. We cannot fight in everything, right? So basically, when we have these situations, we need to understand what is behind the call of each one. Why, right? The question is why. We need to understand what is behind, what is beyond that response or that reaction. Okay. And once we feel that, once we realize what it is, it's easier to overcome the dispute or the argument, But the problem is that we cannot just work on the colors, taking the example you gave to me. I mean, purple is purple, red is red, blue is blue.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's why
you talked about self-knowledge, and I also think there's to me what the predicate of the self-knowledge is the humility. Like, you have to have the humility that you don't know everything and you might be wrong.
You brought a very, very powerful word. One of the first lessons I tell people when they are taking self-knowledge programs is that you have to have humility and acceptance.
Right.
You need to accept certain things with humility. Once you're ready to do it, and look, there's a big difference between accept something and agree with something. Okay? So I accept that my colleague has this problem, but I don't agree. I don't have to agree. I just need to accept. Okay? So I accept. I'm going to continue work with him. Okay? I'm not going to make this a huge problem because I accept that this is his problem.
Well,
not mine, but I don't agree.
On the personality side, I found that, like the personality assessments, I personally found that understanding personality helped me with the acceptance because I understood what my personality was, but in understanding where I was on all those spectra, on all those dimensions, it means that somebody else is not where I am on those. And to your point, it's like, well, they're just different. And I don't agree with them because I'm on this end of that scale and they're on this end of that scale, the opposite end. But, it doesn't mean I'm better. It just means I was born with this predisposition to be on this end of the scale, and they were born with this predisposition to be on the other end of the scale. And it's not, and so they look at the world a little differently than I do. Yeah.
And sometimes people were exposed, Jeff, for certain things that they didn't want to. Right? Like one thing that I didn't mention to you. How did I start?
Hey, Rubens, how did you start in conflict and mediation?
No, because you know what? We are talking about the law, the mediation, and I think I forgot to mention when was the starting point in my life. Okay? It started when I was 12 years old. I was engaged in mediation without knowing about mediation. I was exposed in many family disputes and conflicts. And at that moment, I just felt that instead going out to play with my friends, I had to stay over and protect the environment and try to help my family to overcome the conflicts with 12 years old, right? So I was exposed to these situations from 12 years old, probably to 16, 17. So I didn't know about mediation. I didn't have any training program. I didn't know what I was doing. If you ask me today, I would say probably that moment was the best training I ever had in my life to help families and
It's
people
fascinating.
today, right? But if you ask me, yeah, if you take me back there as a kid
Right.
and ask me, are you happy? Of course not. I would be suffering. I would be very sad. I would be like building some sort of past experience inside myself, in my inner, that I would have to deal in the long run. So today, and this is very interesting because people normally sweep the dust under the rug, right? And because they don't want to face the past experience. And sometimes, Jeff, the past experience are your best ally in life. So, I mean, the experience I had from this, I wouldn't say pleasant experience as a kid, gave me thousands of tools to understand people and help people today. Okay. So basically, this is self-awareness. Okay. Another very simple and quick example. When I decided to move from Brazil to US, I knew this path would be very, very challenging for me. Okay. And last year, which was 2024, which was like a very difficult year for myself, because I was setting my family, learning the process. I didn't even know how to write a check. Let's put it this way. It was like just like a new guy in town, right? So imagine for myself, I was in Brazil, my business going really well. It's still going. I kept that. So let's get back a little bit in the script of our lives. Remember the first one, the first topic of the human needs, comfort and certainty. I had certainty and comfort in a very high level in Brazil. When I moved to US, it's taking some time to make my business profitable. So I'm not as comfortable as I used to be in Brazil, right? Another example, recognition, importance, significance. I'm a guy in Brazil that people know my name. After so many things I've done, people walk in Vertus to seek for my job, for my service, better saying, right? And here,
I mean, in Brazil, you literally wrote the book on
from scratch.
mediation.
Yes, I have a book in mediation, and here I'm like my little kid starting to walk in this country, this beautiful country. So if I'm not aware of this, okay, why I'm saying this? Because from last year up to this date, I've been working myself in the script of my life to keep myself, in the right path, meaning that I understand that there is a big challenge in front of me and I have to take time. So I'm using my own tools, Vertus tools, to keep myself on track and confident about my business. So this is the beauty about the self-knowledge. This is the beauty about getting to know yourself.
Well, and you're a living testament to it. I mean, you've taken on this challenge and you're doing it. And it's amazing. And just congratulations on, well, like I said, the fortitude to do that and then everything that's coming. And as we wrap up here, I think that was a nice thing to wrap up on, but is there anything else you want to share with the audience before we go? Because that was a really nice way to kind of sum the whole thing up. I mean, you got this training program and you actually apply it to your own life, and here you are on this great adventure. I mean, what an adventure! It's just so cool to leave the comfort of that certainty and seek out something new and exciting and different and your family's going to thrive as a result. And I have no question you'll do a great job here because you're just a really interesting, remarkable human being. But anything you want to share before we go?
Thank you first for the words, Jeff. I mean, it's a pleasure to be here. I want to thank the audience for the patience to hear me. I'm sorry if I say something wrong or my accent here sometimes, I'm doing my very best here to be as clear as possible. And the only thing that I would like to share, I think we covered the whole thing, but just don't wait crisis or chaos to connect to yourself. Put the self-awareness the learning about how to deal with conflicts in your life in an ongoing basis, in order to grow, not to solve problems, only to solve problems. And this is for companies, this is for individuals, for families, be in charge of your life, and in order to be in charge of your life, to take the right decisions, the right path, and know how to redirect when you are in the wrong path, you got to connect yourself to your inner, you know, look for those tools because you're going to have a happier, a better life and more solid relationships. That's
Oh,
my message for
uh,
everyone
well,
that
thank you,
had the
Ruben. That's
patience to
great
hear me.
words to end on. And my guest today, Ruben Tilkian from Vertus. Ruben, thank you for taking the time to chat with me this morning. Really enjoyed it. I learned something. Always loved learning things, and it was a fun conversation. And thank you, everybody out there, for listening. Talk to you soon, and God bless.